I took the drone out to one of the places I know best, the mountains of the Pacific Northwest. And no, that wasn't meant to rhyme. I managed to get the Mavic 3 in the air finally and get some impressions of what it's like. Overall, the drone is really fantastic. It's incredibly stable, it has a wide dynamic range, vibrant colors, and a nice sharp image. Taking a look at its obstacle avoidance systems, it is much more detailed than the Mavic 2 Pro was. It actually sees how wide all of the obstacles are around it and displays it on the screen for you in this little yellow bar around the perimeter of the drone. I'm still not going to chance it and take it through anything super thick or crazy. I could see vines, wires, and other thin branches getting the best of this crash avoidance system, so I'm not really going to take the risk. Now, the zoom function is interesting. I don't know that it's going to be the most useful thing to me, because anything over about 4 times zoom starts to get pretty pixelated. But it's also impressive the level of detail that still remains when you start to zoom in. At 14 and 28 times, it's definitely more of an inspection device. It's not going to make it into anybody's home movies. But it can be really useful if you're looking for damage to a building or tower, or if you need to see even if like a bolt is present or missing. Now, another thing that surprised me about this thing's zoom mode is how mother effing stable it was. Zoomed in 28 times, it's still just dead level hovering. I'm sure there's some type of electronic stabilization going on there, but I'm impressed with it no matter what. Even flying around at 8 times zoom and putting in some maneuvers, it looks very, very usable. This is probably better than something you would have got out of a Phantom 4. Even moving at 20 some odd miles an hour at 7 times zoom, it's nice and smooth. Now, one thing that I didn't do while I was testing it was really stretch its legs on sport mode. When I'm first getting acclimated to a drone, I like to keep it real near me and watch everything it's doing. Sport mode obviously puts a lot of distance between you and your drone really quickly, so I wouldn't recommend it until you already have sort of the fundamentals of the controls worked out. Now, it wasn't all smooth sailing. I did have some reception issues when I was standing next to my truck trying to control the drone just 50 some odd feet away from me. It was completely losing contact. All the on-screen controls didn't seem to be affecting the drone in real time. But as I gave myself another 10 to 15 feet of distance from it, it seemed to loosen back up and behave itself. But it was a little unnerving, and it makes me wonder how it's going to deal with reception issues around buildings or perhaps other people and Wi-Fi signals. Battery life seemed to be pretty easily over 30 minutes. When I totaled up all of my powered on time, I had 32 minutes. Now, that wasn't all spent in the sky, but most of it was in the sky, though. I'd estimate at least 80% of that time I was airborne, and when I finally landed, I still had about 18% battery left. That's pretty impressive to me, because typically I don't see anything more than about 20 minutes out of a Mavic 2 Pro or an Inspire 2. So getting 30 plus minutes out of a single battery in mild conditions is going to be really nice. It might even mean that I don't need to get that 4th battery. So when I first tried to get this thing off the ground, I spent a good portion of time just tearing my hair out with the DJI Go 4 app until I realized that DJI Fly is actually the new app. Now, I'm not entirely certain why it is that they need to constantly change the app that connects to their drones, but it would be nice if maybe, it recognized it in the prior app and then sent you to the correct place. Now, I know for people flying an Air 2S or some of the other newer DJI drones, they're going to think this is silly, but for somebody coming from the Go 4 platform completely, I spent far too long trying to figure this out. So in this new app, the layout is a little bit different. The takeoff, all the adjustments, everything are all sort of not where I expected them. It's fairly intuitive, although everything defaults to auto and each setting independently has to be turned off of auto. Takeoff, you press and hold the button on the screen and it lifts off. Pretty typical in terms of steering controls and tilt, responsiveness and everything. The drone was dead level everywhere I went, although there wasn't much wind to speak of either. Gusts of maybe 5 to 8 miles per hour. So one thing I found out the hard way is that my new iPad mount that I purchased for $50 doesn't really work with the supplied cable. I can't say I'm too stunned, but it makes for a very tight squeeze on an iPad. And it doesn't really let you articulate the screen at all. Another gripe I have is the memory card placement. I understand everything has to be packaged a certain way just because the hardware is laid out inside, but it doesn't seem like they gave this a lot of thought. First of all, it's real finicky to get the card in. SD cards, especially micro SD cards, always have that tendency to kind of get oriented the wrong way. Flip it around, get it the right way. It's not that hard to install really, but I also have pretty long fingernails and they're very durable. And I actually keep them for exactly this kind of job. Now, getting it out is another story altogether. Easy enough to click out, but God help you actually gripping the card. You could invert and shake the drone, I suppose, but I don't really know if that would do it either, because it is actually quite in there. I tried pinching it both directions for quite a while with my nails and just could not get the best of it. So the only reasonable solution is tearing the drone down a little bit more. So yank the battery and it's simple as can be. Now your next hazard is going to be dropping that down the battery compartment. Saves you a lot of time and trouble though, just pull the damn battery. Regardless of the recording modes, the drone had plenty of time on a 128 gigabyte memory card. I was shooting in MOV format H.265 and I did discover when I went to go drop this footage onto the timeline in Premiere that Premiere doesn't know what in the fuck this stuff is. True to form, I could take the same footage and drop it directly into Resolve and it just played back fine. So while I'm not particularly fast in Resolve, I did use that to render it out and drop it back in Premiere. A little bit hamstrung, but it worked. So overall, my verdict right now is that this drone is a very worthy upgrade to a Mavic 2 Pro. It does look better right out of the box, and while it's not a miracle of dynamic range, it is very good. Definitely a step up from the flying GoPros of the past, and a healthy inheritor of the Mavic name. The zoom function I don't see getting a lot of use, but anybody who's using this as a tool for inspection or real estate is really going to appreciate the zoom feature and the clarity that it manages to pull out of the image until you get above about 7 times zoom. Even then, not everything is art. Sometimes you just need to see what you're pointing that camera at. So guys, these are just my initial impressions, and it's first time out. Now, obviously, as I use it more, I will have more impressions and insights, and I do want to test this thing's camera in controlled conditions and see really how much better the dynamic range is than a Mavic 2 Pro, and how it stacks up against the X5S and X7 on an Inspire 2. That will be coming up soon, but it's a little bit more of a setup to do that. You can expect it in maybe the next couple of weeks or so. In the meanwhile, if you have any questions or topics that you want me to cover, feel free to comment and let me know. I will be updating about this drone and hopefully some of my other equipment in my off season here in the fall and winter. Thanks for tuning in, and I will talk to you guys later.